I'm pleased to be with you to discuss the City of San Diego's 5-year financial outlook, covering fiscal years 2015 through 2019. With me today is the Director of Financial Management, Jeff Sturek, and Supervising Analyst, Matt Vespi. The outlook is the guiding document for long-range fiscal planning and will serve as a framework for the development of the fiscal year 2015 budget, which will be presented to the City Council in the spring. Basically, it encapsulates the financial data that we know now and can estimate both on previous experience and likely projections to give us a sense of what San Diego's financial picture will look like going forward. As the chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, I have worked hard to make this budget process far more inclusive. The City Council now weighs in early in the process of the budget development with their individual priorities. Members of the public have more opportunities to participate in the state and to state the needs of their neighborhoods. And our independent budget analyst still provides invaluable guidance and insight in many reports throughout the entire process. The Outlook is the 9th one prepared since November 2006, and I'm proud not just of the numbers included, but the format that is being used. This version is far more user-friendly and comprehensive in the scope of information that is included. This is added transparency, should inspire the public to provide additional input and heighten the public's confidence in our municipal government. We've included 4 different sections this year: a baseline budget, mandates, critical needs, and discretionary operational needs. When the city departments provided us with a total of $750 million of needs over the next 5 years, I worked with our team to try to split up those needs into those 4 categories. We'll go through them now. The baseline budget consists mainly of the city's ongoing revenues and expenditures for the next 5 years, including adjustments necessary to continue existing service levels. We have improved this by eliminating one-time revenues and expenditures that are in our current budget. It's important to note that the ongoing revenues are basically balanced with ongoing expenditures thanks to the difficult decisions of the City Council, previous city leaders, and our employees during the global economic recession. That said, we are projecting a year 1 deficit of approximately $19 million in fiscal year 2015, followed by surpluses through fiscal year 2019. It's helpful to note It's helpful to note at this point that prior to last Friday, we were projecting a deficit of a very manageable $7.5 million. Our independent retirement board made a decision last week which reduces its own investment risk and helps ensure our strong system for our retirees, but it did add about $12 million to the city's annual pension payment. So as you can see, the baseline budget is looking pretty darn good. So then we turn to the mandates section. This categorizes revenues and expenditures required by federal, state, and city mandates. When it comes to city mandates, this is the section where we put items that the City Council has approved which have financial impacts. While the City Council could reverse their position and eliminate the financial impacts, I've included them here based on our current status. In particular, these mandates have the largest impact on financial projections. They are projected to reduce revenues by $2.5 million while increasing expenditures by $40.5 million. Just next year, bringing next year's deficit to $62.1 million if we move forward with our current plans. Among those kinds of plans, just to give you some examples, are the penny for the arts, operational expenses for 3 new fire stations and 2 new branch libraries, the police department's 5-year plan, and the cost of enforcement of the neighborhood parking protection ordinance. When the council and the public are faced with things like supporting the arts or building much-needed fire stations, the answer of yes certainly seems obvious. When compiled together and seeing their full financial impacts, it can be a bit surprising. I'm going to go through a couple of those, just to give you all some specifics. The neighborhood parking protection ordinance will cost about $1.5 million and yet bring in about $2.8 million next year, according to our projections. Penny for the Arts will dedicate some of our tourist tax funds away from the general fund, meaning a difference of about $5.5 million next year and ramping up to about $12 million in fiscal year 2019. Our investment in deferred capital, our maintenance and repair fund incrementally increases from $56.1 million next year to $82.2 million in fiscal year 19, and debt service payments for our current and future bond issuances are projected to increase from $18.6 million to $39.3 million in fiscal year 19. The Eastside Mission Valley Fire Station, Home Avenue Fire Station, and Skyline Hills Fire Stations are expected to be funded through deferred capital bonds. By fiscal year 19, this will add about $5.2 million in operating expenses, including the needed personnel. And the police department's 5-year plan, which the city council approved last week, will create additional costs between $14.3 million and $28 million. These are just some of the items the city council has mandated in the previous year. Far more are included in detail in the report. Now, beyond the baselines that I started with, or the mandates I just covered, we'll move on to the section of critical operational needs. This incorporates programs and projects identified by the departments as improvements to service levels or upgrades of equipment. These needs are specified in the outlook in greater detail, but their impact on the budget would obviously be increased expenditures in each of the next 5 years, moving us from deficits as far as the eye can, moving us towards deficits as far as the eye can see, ranging from about 78 million next year to over 19 million in fiscal year 19. We have a chart here on the screen for you. Bit of an eye chart, but I see Liam brought his glasses today, so I'm sure you're probably good. Some needs had to go into a separate list of discretionary operational needs, which does not appear in the outlook, which appears in the outlook as an attachment. I'm going to spare you the full list because, again, we're getting wonky here. I realize that, but I will share that additional funds for providing a year-round homeless shelter are on that list, and this should demonstrate the very high level of needs that the city has when shelters cannot be included on the previous list for funding consideration. A couple more areas of topics, and then we'll be happy to take questions that you might have. With regard to our reserves, while our list of needs and wants are long and expensive, the city remains responsible with healthy financial reserve levels in each of the years of the outlook. Our reserve policy requires us to keep the general fund reserves at 8%, and we currently have reserves above that. As we saw last Friday, when SD-SER's board voted on the new discount rate, the circumstances surrounding our budget can change positively or negatively because of many factors, things like the pension vote, tourist tax returns, property values, special election costs, disasters, all of which can impact us and have done so over the more recent outlooks. This year's outlook is formatted to clearly illustrate the financial impacts of our previous decisions. I know that this will be essential as I work with our management team, my council colleagues, and our neighbors to develop a proposed budget for fiscal year 2015, and I urge all of us to consider these figures as we weigh policy commitments throughout the year. I want everyone to be mindful that this is not the budget for next year. As is shown in our baseline budget, our current service levels are manageable for the foreseeable future. Tomorrow afternoon, the first quarter budget monitoring report will be released. I fully expect that we'll be able to overcome the projected deficit without sacrificing neighborhood services, thanks in part to higher than anticipated property tax revenues. With smart decision making, the City of San Diego will have a balanced budget in fiscal year 2015, and I look forward to working with our neighbors and council to meet our service obligations with the funds that we have available. Finally, just a word of thanks. I want to thank our financial management director, Jeff Sturak, Matt Vespi on his team, and their dedicated group of professionals for helping prepare this 5-year financial outlook. The changes they have made this more comprehensive and user-friendly and help us to increase our transparency and will help us to make better fiscal decisions going forward. So, gentlemen, thank you both for your great work on this. I also want to remind San Diegans that the 5-year financial outlook and the first quarter monitoring report will be discussed at a special meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee next Thursday on November 21st at 3 p.m. And the outlook will be discussed by the full City Council on December 9th. So with those general comments, I'm here to take questions, and then I have these two gentlemen, should your questions get even wonkier than I can handle. What do you got?
Did any of the one-time revenues that the previous mayor depended on for the current fiscal year come back to bite you?
Well, not really. I mean, Jeff, you want to?
We've backed those out. So when you look at the new projection for fiscal year 2015, that includes backing out those one-time revenues. So at the $19.1 million deficit, that's included. So, and as the interim mayor alluded to, as of Friday, we're at a $7.5 million deficit, which on $1 billion overall general fund budget, that's very, very manageable, if not nothing. And that's in comparison, if you remember back to 2009, just to even get to the baseline, we had to make $90 million worth of reductions. So you can see over the years, we definitely have righted the ship.
that help, Jay? Liam?
Yeah, so previous administrations have not included a lot of the things that you included
Right.
in this. Why did you make that decision to include these?
It's about transparency. I appreciate you noticing that, and that again is, I think, in deference to the great work of Matt, Jeff, and their team. We want to be honest with folks about what things cost. We want to be transparent in the way that we're running the city, and I think that this 5-year outlook it really enhances that transparency. I think, given what we've just coming out of with an administration that was far from transparent, this is a way to show faith with our taxpayers about how we're using our limited resources to service their neighborhoods.
Do you foresee the things that are listed in all the way through their critical operations needs? Forgive me if I don't have the
It's okay.
terminology correct. But do you foresee that as things that would be incorporated into the next budget?
Not all of them, no. I mean, we don't have enough funds to accommodate all of the wishes and desires. I mean, but what we want to do is be clear with everyone what these things cost and allow certainly the public to grapple with them and help us prioritize, and ultimately allow the city council to make those prioritizations. We have adopted a number of plans to try and tackle some of our priorities, certainly around public safety, infrastructure, and others. The reality is our resources may not match all of those desires. I still support those plans. I think they're reasonable blueprints from how to get from A to B, and the council is right to take those on. But we have to match those against our fiscal reality, and that is one of improving finances, but not ones where we can take care of every need in every community.
Is part of the goal here to lay this out for city council members to say, hey, this is what you wanted, it's creating a massive deficit here, and maybe we might want to rethink some of these things?
That's one way to look at it. I would take a more charitable view, which I think is that, again, we've adopted these blueprints. They seem like reasonable ways to operationally achieve the service levels that we want. Again, of course, we have to match that with our financial reality. And I think that what you saw in times past, where folks were very happy to spend whatever without any real thought about whether or not we could afford it, those days are over at City Hall. And we are going to act very transparently, and we're going to take on what we can afford to reasonably maintain. It makes no sense whatsoever to open up a brand new library or build a new library that we can't actually operate, right? And so when you see all of this information laid out very transparently, I think we can make those decisions. It's not going to be an easy discussion. There are a lot of desires and needs, but as I think Jeff just mentioned, when you compare this to where we were just a few years ago, we will have council members who, despite the shortcomings in terms of their aspirations, they're going to, I think, embrace this budget because it isn't looking at a $90 million reduction. It's looking at a very manageable deficit, and the discussion about enhancements we can have going forward. Who else? Gene.
Projection to $104 million in FY19. With the Sanders administration, 1.95, the forecast projected $120 million. Is that pretty blue sky? 5 years you're saying there's a variety of factors that could happen.
Right.
We're not getting a pony for Christmas that big, are we?
Just for you, Gene, though. Question is about our sort of 5th year and the surplus. Use the word surplus because that's a new word we haven't heard a lot around here. That's based on our best guess at this point in time. And I think that any of us in our own lives would like to be able to guess with some certainty 5 years out. I think we recognize that that's not necessarily possible, but this is our best guess. And going back to Craig's question about how do you implement some of these plans the council has adopted, it may be that we can't do it in this budget year, but if our projections bear out, we can start looking at a time where those dollars can be invested into public safety, into infrastructure, into our organization. It's hard to say that is going to be absolutely in the bank 5 years now. I think that's somewhat impossible, but it is to give you a general sense, and I think certainly the public a general sense that we have turned a corner and that we can project surpluses. This is something that probably was unimaginable just a few years ago, but it's what we're looking at now. Others?
There's going to be a new mayor coming in this spring. When you're running for things, you promise things. When you promise things, they cost money. Is this sort of telling folks that the things that they're promising, they may not have as much money as they thought to implement some of it?
I think that's a way to look at it. So the question is about how does this match up with campaign promises, right? Is that fair to say? And I don't have the luxury of going out and overpromising. I can just provide what I can afford, and I think this is a way to allow the mayoral candidates to see what the future looks like, and then hopefully adjust their representations to match that. I recognize that there's the line about you campaign in poetry, but govern in prose. Here's your prose, but it's pretty good stuff on the whole. I mean, when I was elected in 2008, we weren't coming in with a whole lot of extra cash. We're in a situation now where we have a very modest deficit. Compare us against New York City, LA, and other places. We have a lot to be proud of with regard to how the hard work it's taken to get to this point. But it isn't to say that the checkbook is open and we're going to pave the streets with gold. We're going to have to maintain our fiscal discipline, and it does certainly start from the top. I'm trying to set a tone of fiscal responsibility, and I'd expect that whoever assumes the duties of mayor in the spring will do the same. Anyone else? James? Yes, sir.
Unrelated to budget,
Yeah.
we've been talking to some veterans who play every Monday at the Torrey Pines Golf Course.
Okay.
They were charged a holiday rate, which is about double on holidays.
Okay.
They were a little offended, I think, that they, as veterans, had to pay that rate on that day. I don't think they minded paying it on other days,
Okay.
what have you. And they wanted me to take some of these concerns, I guess, to the city. Give me your thoughts on that. Is that something that should be addressed or not?
I'm sorry, I don't have enough information to comment on that. That's the first I've heard about it, but I'd be happy to look into it and get back to you later today if that's okay.
That's fine. I'll
Okay.
get to you.
Sure. James, you had another one?
Yeah, how
Jim.
does this affect the Chargers? They're going to want a stadium here in 5 years, and
All roads go back to the Chargers. What is
yeah. Even if they pick up the bulk of the cost, the city's still going to have to do some things, around the property, upgrading infrastructure, that sort of
Surely.
thing. So what does this outlook say to them in terms of what the city can afford?
Well, I mean, that's in my view, that's a separate conversation because I don't know the full cost of the proposal, what portion they would like taxpayers to take on, and the extent to which taxpayers are willing to take that on. Obviously, our creditworthiness, our improving finances, the opportunity to have forecasts for surpluses do create opportunities for discussion. And I think, as was I think what Liam was perhaps laying out, we have a host of needs in the city. I would think that a lot of San Diegans will put this on the list of needs, a new football stadium or retaining the Chargers, and we can have that discussion. I'd point out that this budget does continue to include the subsidy for Qualcomm Stadium, which is a substantial amount of money. There are multiple opportunities, but I can't tell you what the future looks like for them because I don't still know quite what the cost is or what they expect from us. But my door remains open. We continue to have fairly frequent conversations with the Chargers and their representatives, and as soon as I have an offer or a proposal of a deal that I can react to, I'm happy to share that with the public and certainly get their response. My hope is that we can be partners with the Chargers in creating a deal that makes sense for them and for taxpayers, and that we can go hand in hand to the public and say this is a good deal for our community. And I'll just end where I always do on this issue, is that it is my personal belief that we are a great world-class city. Great world-class cities have professional sports, and so we should work to try and keep the Chargers here. Of course, the devil's in the details, but I'm a details guy, so I'm happy to take that on. Anyone else?
Follow up on
Yeah.
the Qualcomm Stadium issue. You mentioned the subsidy. What can you tell us about the city's relationship legally and logistically with Kinder Morgan and the remediation of the petroleum flume that is underneath the stadium running into the San Diego River, and to what extent, when and if the idea is made that we're going to leverage that property as part of a financing scheme, that's not going to be a drag on the conversation?
We are now getting really wonky, ladies and gentlemen. So the question is about the Qualcomm site, the fuel plume that is beneath it, and the remediation and ongoing litigation. And that's what I'd tell you, is that this is ongoing litigation. We continue to be in an legally adversarial position with Kinder Morgan for what we believe are unacceptable impacts onto our property and to groundwater and other resources there. It could impair the value of the property and the potential for doing anything else with it, whether it's for a new football stadium or for some other civic purpose. And we'll continue, unfortunately, I think, to be in litigation for some time. But we're aggressively defending the city's property rights there, and I expect that we'll continue to do that. Maybe one more for anybody?
What's the latest with the TMD?
Latest with the TMD? Well, I think that we are in discussions with the TMD. I think when you look at this budget and you know that our tourist tax is the third largest revenue source to the city, those are dollars that go into our general fund to pave roads, to pay for police officers and firefighters, and to fund library hours. We should be aggressive in doing what we can to grow that. I would say that under the impaired promotional approach of the previous administration, we are not fully marketing our destination, and as a result, we're missing out on what appears to be a recovery in tourist receipts in other communities. We have seen some growth, but not the growth that perhaps other communities who are aggressively promoting. And so it's my hope to offer for the City Council's consideration a way that would allow us to increase promotional efforts with the hopes of generating more tourist tax that, again, can be reinvested in neighborhoods, and that we do that in a way that the tourist industry can feel comfortable with, that limits the city's liability. So I think we'll be doing that fairly soon. We're continuing to have those discussions, and as soon as we have something that we can report, we will share that with you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for being here today. I think that on the whole, this is some good news that San Diegans can embrace, and I certainly want to thank the public for their patience as we dealt with the city's financial crisis over the last number of years. And I want to thank our city employees for being a part of the solution to allow us to get to a point where we have, again, I think a fairly modest deficit that pretty much any other mayor in the country would be grateful for if they were a big city mayor, and then a situation where we have surpluses forecasted going forward. And again, the work now is to work closely with the public, with our city council colleagues, to put together a budget that is balanced and delivered on time. I know that we'll be able to do that. Thank you very much.